Alright, welcome to the first of many Street Fighter 6 videos. The game is not out yet. This is the open beta. The very first thing you want to notice is in the top right, it says X. If I press X, it goes to my battle settings, and this is where I can turn on ranked or casual. However, make sure you go to the character tab and select your character, and not just your character, but also if you press Y, you can change your control type from modern to classic. Once you have selected your character, you can freely go into casual or ranked matches, or you can actually go into training mode. Now, there is not a dedicated training mode. There is not a dedicated training mode. What you have to do is you have to sit down at a cabinet. The problem with sitting down at a cabinet is if someone happens to sit down across from you, you can no longer go to training mode. You have to fight each other. The whole purpose of this open beta is to force people to fight each other so that they can stress test the netcode. This will not become a problem when the game comes out. Now, you can bypass this. If you really want to go to training mode, you can go to an unpopulated server like Europe 93 and sit down at a cabinet in a far off corner that no one will ever join. I will not be going over the training mode stuff in this video. Just know that it is very, very robust. Now, let's start with the absolute basics of what is the goal of the game. The goal of the game is to deplete the opponent's health bar down to 0. And all 8 characters that are in the open beta have the same health. They all have 10,000 health. And you do this by attacking. So when my attacks hit my opponent, their health goes down. Now we're in training mode, so their health goes back up again immediately, but in a regular match, that will not happen. So the first to deplete the opponent's health to 0 wins the round, and the first to win 2 rounds wins the entire match. And at the very top middle of the screen is the timer. Right now I'm in training mode, so it's set to infinity, but in a real match it'll tick down over time, and when the timer hits 0, whichever character has more health remaining wins. So that's the introduction out of the way. Let's start talking about how to actually control your character. So you can hold left or right to walk, and by the way, on the right side of the screen you can always see my inputs as I do them. So hold left or right to walk. This is pretty slow, but it's very safe. This is your primary method of movement in this game, I would say, because I can walk any amount of distance and then stop on a dime whenever I want to. Second, you can crouch by holding a downward direction, so any of the 3 downward directions, and certain attacks will just whiff over the opponent if they are ducking. And next is you can jump by holding any of the upward diagonals. However, you have 3 different jump arcs depending on which direction you hold, so you can jump straight up or forward or backwards. Now, jumping is pretty dangerous. You are locked into that trajectory unless you have something like character specific that changes your jump arc, and you can't really defend yourself while jumping. So it's a very common tactic to see the opponent jump at you and do an attack that hits like upward, and we call that an anti-air. That's basically guaranteed. Most characters have some sort of attack in their moveset that is very specifically designed to be a good anti-air because it attacks upward like that. It might even have some invincibility to air attacks. You can also dash by double tapping left or right. And dashes are faster than walking, but you're committed to the dash once it starts. I can't stop the dash once I start it. And in addition, there's one special property to backdashes. The first half of the backdash is invincible to throw attacks. And now I have to talk about your control type. So here in training mode, or as you saw earlier in the battle settings, you can change your control type. I'm going to tell you right now, only ever pick classic. Do not pick modern. The only time that you should pick modern is if you want to play the game for like 1 or 2 days and then stop, which is not a good idea because it's a $60 game. Modern controls are not good for learning the game. Modern controls are just worse. If you want to get a jump start ahead of your friends in the short term, pick modern. You're going to win more often with modern because they're easier to use, but they're less versatile and you're not going to have access to all your moves. And more importantly, the way you perform your moves in the control types is different, which means that you're not learning how to use classic controls while using modern controls. So just by nature of picking modern controls, you're hindering your learning process. So if you plan to play this game for more than like 2 days, always pick classic control type. And there's my rant on classic controls versus modern controls. Now we can talk about hit types. In order to block attacks in this game, you hold away from the opponent. Now this can be straight back, which is also how you walk backwards, or it can be the downward diagonal, or down left in this case. These are two very different types of blocking other than just crouching or walking backwards. See, there are certain attacks called lows that you must block while crouching, and there are certain attacks called overheads that you must block while standing. Most attacks, however, can be blocked in either direction. So here is an example of an attack that you can just block however you want, right? But if I do a low attack like this, he can't block this while standing. He has to make sure he crouches. And likewise, if he's crouching, any overhead attack cannot be blocked. He has to stand up to block it. And just as a general rule of thumb, if the opponent is on the ground, block low, and if the opponent is in the air, block high. There are some moves that come from the ground, which are overheads, like this one, but they are very slow and reactable. So these are called hit types. You have overheads and lows and highs. And every striking attack in the game has a hit type. Now, what is a strike? A strike is an attack type. So there are 3 types of attacks in this game. You have the strike attack, which is most of your attacks. You also have throws, which I mentioned earlier, and you also have projectiles. So those are your 3 attack types: strikes, throws, and projectiles. And the difference between them isn't that important. Certain things will act differently depending on what the opponent is doing. Like there are some things which are invincible to strikes but not projectiles, for example, or things which are invincible to throws but not strikes. Now, how do you perform your attacks? Well, you have 6 attack buttons. You have 3 punches and 3 kicks. And you have a light, medium, and heavy version of both. So you have light punch, medium punch, heavy punch, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick. Those are your 6 buttons. Some really old people will use different words to describe these. They will use jab for light punch, short for light kick, strong for medium punch, forward or straight for medium kick, fierce for heavy punch, and roundhouse for heavy kick. I will not be using those terms on purpose. I might use them sometimes on accident, but I will be using light punch, light kick, etc., because that makes more sense. So every character has 6 standing attacks. We call these normals, or like normal attacks. They also change while you're crouching. So you have your crouching normals, that's 12 normals, and you also have your jumping normals. So that is a total of 18 normal attacks for every single character, and they're all different. Every character has 18 normals, but you can also go to the command list, and now you can see a list of all the unique moves to your character. And all of these moves are completely unique to the character, and the way you do them will change from character to character. Now, which category they're in is important. So you have specials, you have supers, you have unique attacks or command normals, and you have throws. For the most part, command normals are just more normals. Your special moves, however, are, like the name suggests, very special, because you can cancel certain normals into specials, like this. So watch what happens if I do this command normal on its own and then try to jump. See the long animation he takes? He takes a very long time to recover. However, if I input a special move as the command normal connects, I can cancel the last half of the animation into the special move. And only certain normals can be canceled into specials. For example, this move cannot be canceled, but this move can. And for the most part, there's no like weird specific rules. If a normal is cancelable, it is cancelable into every single special move. In addition to the basic cancel, you also have chains. Your light normals will typically chain into each other. This is kind of character specific, but for the most part, you're allowed to chain your lights into each other. Now, of course, eventually the opponent will get pushed too far away for your jabs to connect, and at that point, you might consider canceling to a special or doing something else. You also have unique actions when you press button combinations. If you press both light buttons, light punch and light kick, you get your throw. And throws are short range but completely unblockable. If you press both mediums, you get your drive parry, and you can also do a dash during your drive parry to do a drive rush. I'll go more in depth on the drive system in a later video. Or you can press both heavies to get your drive impact. Now I want to talk about drive impact very briefly right now because this is very important. You're going to be coming across drive impact a lot in your games, even at a low level. In fact, I would recommend going into your button settings and setting one of your extra buttons to do drive impact by itself. Now, drive impact has armor on it. This means you can't really attack into it safely, and if they block it, you're completely safe, they can't punish you. And if they're in the corner, this is the important part, if they're in the corner and they block it, they get crumpled for a combo. So this is going to be a huge game changer, especially at low levels of play. The thing that you need to understand about drive impact is that it loses to itself, and it's slow enough that you should be able to see it happening on the screen and hit your own drive impact to counter it. In fact, there's even a setting in training mode called Drive Impact Defense Practice. You can click on this and it trains you to test your reaction time. So every time he does drive impact, I'm ready for it. So you need to do this. You need to practice reacting to drive impact. This will make or break low-level matches. Let me repeat. This will make or break low-level matches. If you are unable to react to drive impact, you are fundamentally playing a different game than everybody else. So I highly recommend to focus on this very simple minigame-esque thing first before you start learning anything else special. Now that's just a very brief overview of drive impact. I will talk about it again once I make a video about the drive system. Now let's go back to throws for a minute. So every character can press light punch plus light kick to get a very short range throw. We call this a normal throw because every character has it. Depending on your character, you might also have a command throw in your command list. In the beta, currently there is exactly one command throw, and it's on Jamie. So they're not very prevalent right now, but when the game finally comes out, there will be characters with a lot of command grabs and characters with very important game-changing command grabs. Now, every throw attack is unblockable, but there's a unique thing about normal throws, and that is that they can be broken. So if both players attempt to throw each other at about the same time, a throw break occurs. And as you can see, when a throw break happens, both characters are like pushed away from each other and nothing really happens. If you think the opponent is going to throw you, you can throw them at the same time and it'll just cancel out. Now the window to break throws is pretty small. It's not tiny, but it's small enough to where you can't react to them throwing you. This is a guess. And as you would expect, you cannot perform a normal throw or throw tech while doing something else. So like I can't do this, and then if they throw me during my recovery, I can't tech the throw. And if you're curious from Street Fighter 4 and 5, if you crouch and press throw, your character will stand up and throw. So this is the same as Street Fighter 5. There's no crouch teching. Now the last thing that I want to cover in this video is knockdowns. So if you knock the opponent into the air, they eventually fall to the ground, and you can see he gets up again. So this is a knockdown and a wake up. You have exactly 2 options off of any knockdown, and one of those options is to do nothing, which is what the dummy is doing right now, which looks like that. He gets up in place. However, your second option is to press any 2 buttons. If you press any 2 attack buttons, as you land, your character will roll backwards and end up further away than they would otherwise. Now, it's important to note, this looks similar to Street Fighter V, but it's not, because no matter what you do, your character gets up at the same time. What changes is where you are. So if you do nothing, you stay in place, but if you press 2 buttons, you roll backwards. The time at which you get off the ground does not change. It is impossible to change your wake up timing. You can only change your wake up spacing, which means that if you're in the corner like I am right now, it doesn't matter which one you do, they're both exactly the same. And the only exception to this rule is the hard knockdown. So certain attacks will cause a hard knockdown, as you can see on the screen. These attacks, no matter what happens, you can't do the back roll. You always get up in place every time. And that is everything that I wanted to cover in this video. Like I said, this will be the first in a very long string of videos for Street Fighter 6. Expect 2 or 3 more videos during the beta, if I can do them in time. I will not be focusing on character-specific stuff during the beta. I will be focusing on character-specific stuff once the game comes out, because there are some balance changes that are not in the beta but will be in the final game. If you would like my notes on the game, then check the link in the description. My website hosts all of my guides, and as far as I can tell, I have the entire game system explained pretty thoroughly. This game is a lot more complex than previous Street Fighters. There's a lot of things that you can do with your drive meter, and there's a lot of things that happen sometimes but not all the time, and they're all important. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, be sure to go to my website and read all my tutorials, be sure to join my Discord, because that is by far the most efficient way to contact me, and obviously say hi to the puppy for me. Say bye-bye. 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 Ah!